Well, it's time to look back and reflect on how I did on my priority series of 2023. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizard of the Reads, and as always guys, I am Andrew, and today we are doing a little bit of a reflection because I released a video earlier, either late last year or early this year, on 10 series I wanted to focus on, at least starting or trying, and yeah, it went about as well as it did last year. But before we get into that, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, as it does help the channel grow, and you can check the description box down below for links to all of my social media, including links to the Discord, my Amazon wishlist, my Patreon, and my Pango books. That out of the way, let's jump right on into this because I've got a lot to talk about. So this first section is going to be about the books I read this year, these series that I wanted to try and see how I did. And I did a lot of DNFing again this year. Surprise! And then, of course, if you want to just see what I'm prioritizing for next year, you can just jump to the time card in the description box down below. That said, let's start off with Cycle of Fire by Janie Wirtz. Now, this one, I ended up really enjoying Storm Warden, and I read the whole trilogy because they're three relatively short books. I didn't love the last book, though, so I'm still kind of mixed on my feelings because I really liked the first book. I really liked the second book. And then I'm kind of confused on the ending of the third book, so maybe that's one I need to reread in the next couple years and see how I feel about it. But that was the first one that I wanted to do. Then it was Saga of the Forgotten Warrior by Larry Correia, and I read the first two of this one, and I strongly liked elements of both of these books, but there was also times when it just wasn't working for me anymore, and I don't know how I feel about it. I started the third book and I wasn't quite feeling it, so I NFN'd it, but I haven't DNF'd it. It's just kind of in limbo. Then I wanted to try Draconis Memoria. I read all three Draconis Memoria books, and it was about a 3-star series for me. I still really enjoy Anthony Ryan's writing. It's just not my favorite work by Anthony Ryan. I felt like it was trying to do a whole lot in a limited amount of page count. It was just these big, bombastic ideas and world building and ancient history and dragons and wars and politics and inventions, and it was a lot. To kind of squeeze into 3 books, I think. But, yeah. Next, we have got A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. And I read the first two, and I loved them. I had a great experience with those first 2 books. And I wasn't disliking the third book. I just kind of had a ooh squirrel moment. There was a moment where Tyrion and his father are, like, squabbling, and I was just like, ugh. Like, go do that somewhere else. I just, for some reason, I wasn't in the mood for that particular chapter of squabbling, and I just kind of was like, I'll come back to this later, and I will come back to this later, but this is currently sitting at an NFN. Then we've got Daughter of the Empire by Janie Wirtz and Raymond E. Feist. This is the Empire Trilogy, and honestly, Daughter of the Empire, in isolation, probably my new favorite political fantasy book. It's phenomenal. It's outstanding. The follow-up, though, which I believe is Servant or Mistress. No, I think Mistress is book 2. I suppose I could just lean over and look. Yeah, Mistress is book 2 and Servant is book 3. Mistress just wasn't working for me as much. Like, I got about 150 pages in, and I just couldn't get into it. So that's also currently sitting at an NFN. Next up, we have got Northern Wrath, the Hang God Trilogy by Tilda Cold Holt. And I liked the first book. I gave that one about 4 stars. And then the person I was buddy reading with, which is Joel the Boiled Jellyfish. But we just kind of mutually agreed to we both weren't feeling book 2. And we haven't come back to it yet. So I'm kind of waiting on Jordan to kind of let me know if he's DNFing or if we're coming back to it to do the buddy read again. I don't know where I sit with this one. I'm going to say NFN, but if Jordan walks away from it, will probably walk away from it as well. Then, speaking of Boiled Jellyfish, he loves this series. This is Emaneska by Ben Galley. And this one was very quickly just not for me. I didn't make it in far enough to make a lot of judgment calls. There was just something built into the characterization of the main character that I couldn't quite believe. There was a bit of just absurd recklessness, I think, and I only made it like 100 pages in, and I was like, you know what? I'm calling this now. I don't want to get like mad at this series, and so I'm gonna leave now. So this one was a DNF, unfortunately, and I think a lot of them, the next ones, are going to be DNFs. We've got Kingdom of Liars by Nick Martell, and I liked Kingdom of Liars, but at the same time, it felt in my brain as I was reading it like I was playing an old school video game that was kind of on rails. Like it was like a guided story almost. It felt very strange to be kind of guided through the story. It felt like I could almost always predict what was gonna happen next. And I wasn't really in love with that feeling, despite the fact that I love those kinds of video games. And so that one ended up being just a DNF. I made it about 30% into the first book. And it wasn't bad by any means. It didn't enthrall me. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one. And then we've got Sharpe's Tiger by Bernard Cornwell. And this was a very quick DNF. I made it, again, about 15-20% into the book. And character, I just couldn't vibe with any of the characters. I couldn't vibe with Sharpe, the protagonist. I didn't really like the motivations or anything like that. And it just overall, it felt like a miss. And I was sad because this was the first book by Bernard Cornwell that I had read since Warlord Chronicles. So that was a very quick DNF as well. And then finally, we've got Deathgate Cycle. And I don't know what I was expecting with Deathgate Cycle, but I thought the first book was about 3 to 3.5 stars. It felt very Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, which I feel isn't a fair critique to judge the authors because they're writing the way they write. I think the issue was that my expectation was that it was going to be nothing like Dragonlance, and it was very much like Dragonlance. It was just like characters like in Dragonlance, just not written in the Dragonlance world. There was a lot of silliness that I wasn't anticipating, and overall, my expectation just didn't meet up with the reality of what I was reading. And I never continued on to Elven Star and just kind of walked away from the series. So I'm sad, but that one is also a DNF of the series. So that's how I did last year. And if past lists are anything to go off, putting these 10 books on this list is dangerous. But we're going to do it anyway for your entertainment and mine 10 months to a year down the road. So starting off, again, making the list is Bernard Cornwell with The Last Kingdom. Uhtred, Son of Uhtred. It's a 10-book series. I've got the first 3. I'd at least like to start this series so that I at least know if it's for me. But yeah, that is the first book making this list. Next up, I've had it on my shelf long enough. I'd like to do this historical fiction, Pillars of the Earth. It's been on my shelf, I think, for, going on around 2 years. And I just like to learn about it. It sounds fascinating, even if it doesn't sound exactly up my alley. Like Pillars of the Earth, it's literally, no pun intended, a pillar of the historical fiction kind of genre. And I need to read it because I've got 4 books on my shelf by Ken Follett in this series, and I haven't started it yet. So I need to take the plunge. Then one I am looking to get into because I have fallen in love with the assassin fantasy subgenre. We've got Andy Peliquin's Dark Blade Assassin. And this is a beefy book. It's about 7 books long, I think, at this point. And I just need to know if it's for me so that I can go ahead and A, buy another bookshelf, and then B, buy the rest of Andy's books, because Andy is a legend. So I'm hoping to really, really love his books, because, the man is just top tier. Next up, we've got another top tier gentleman. We have got The Way of Edan by Philip Chase. A lot of my friends have been reading this. Dr. Philip Chase is a pillar of the BookTube fantasy community, and I just want to experience this world that he's been working on for 18 years, and I just quite haven't been able to fit it in yet, so I'm hoping here soon. Then we have got Pillars of Peace by Tom Dumbrell. This was kindly sent to me by the author, and I've purchased the other 2 books. It's been on my radar for about a year and a half. I've had the ebooks for a while now. I just kind of want to explore this world. I'm looking for a little bit more of a political fantasy in this one, with some action as well, and I just love the cover, so I want to know if this one is for me. And then we've got 5 more that I am looking to start in 2024. We have got Amaris Thetis. This is the first SPFBO winner. I've got all 5 books on my shelf. This is The Thief Who Pulled on Trouble's Braids by Michael McClung. And, I mean, it's a short book, which means I'm very excited to read it and give it a shot. But, yeah, we've got this one right here. And then, of course, we have got Engines of Empire by R.S. Ford. And I've been told by my buddy Jordan from Middle of Nowhere that I'm going to love this series. And Alan also really liked this series. It's a mix of like fantasy and sci-fi and steampunk, a little bit of Empire. I'm here for it, and I want to give it a shot and figure out what all the fuss is about. Plus, it's thicker books. I've got the first 2 books on my shelf, and I want to know. When it comes to my Asian fantasy, this one was recommended to me about 2 years ago, and I just recently, last year, got all the books on my shelf. These covers are amazing, stunning, gorgeous, beautiful, and for my Asian fantasy, I just want to know what it's about because it sounds so incredibly cool. And then my final 2 books, we have got Jackal of Nar by John Marco, which is Tyrants and Kings. Tyrants and Kings, there we go, is the name of the series. I don't know where I'm getting Jackals from, but this is the first book. I've got them in trade paperback. I've been meaning to read this now for going on 1.5 to 2 years, ever since Bryce from Shelf Centered first mentioned the book and put it on my radar. Then I got to know John when he started self-pubbing his other series, which I've also got on the shelf. I want to try that, hopefully, fingers crossed. And then, of course, my friend Tiago Abdallah sent me these when my son was born. And this is The Girl in the Stars by Mark Lawrence. This is the Book of Ice, which is the sequel trilogy to Book of the Ancestor. And it's about time that I read it. I really want to get to all of these series and give them just a fair chance. Let me know, do you have any priority series that you want to read in 2024? Please let me know in the comments down below. But that's all I've really got for you today, guys. So till next time, peace out, stay magical, bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons.